What was one of the biggest contracts that you landed?
If I'm ever going to break out of traditional ABA and be respected as a business leader and an executive, I have to let these them know that I could kind of play on the field with them. And so I decided, like, let me just check this out. He told me how much I would make. 10 years in the field, and I was like, okay, what else can I do? So I get that question a lot too. Like, what else can I do besides just case management? I had no caseload at all. And so I spent my whole day in the
Can
office
you
and
can you
my
say that
caseload.
one more time? You
I
had
had
no.
no caseload. And I was scared. I was like, I'm gonna miss my family. I first became passionate about OBM before I even knew what it was. But then once I discovered what it was, and I don't remember how I heard about it, probably an email from the BACB or something that was like, take this class. Went on maternity leave, and while I was on leave, I took a certification in OBM.
Hi, I'm Dom, the BCBA mom, and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest. We have Miss Portia James, BCBA, and a specialist in organizational behavior management. So, Portia, let's dive right into it because my viewers are always asking about ways to go after different applications of applied behavior analysis,
Mhm.
kind of like OBM, organizational behavior management. So first off, can you break down for us what exactly is OBM and how does that differ from your more traditional work that a BCBA would do? But what I really want to know is when did you know that this was your path? Have you ever had a traditional caseload? Did you always know that you wanted to rejuvenize workspaces and empower organizations? Were you ever up in the middle of the night, like, I got to get these session notes done? Like, when did all of this happen for you? Because to be honest, stepping outside of the norm and doing something that only a small fraction of the field is doing is a really bold move. So I know there was a
Yeah.
lot, but I want to get
Thank
into
you.
all of that.
Yeah, that's exciting. No, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be
Yes,
here. I myself have been a follower of you for a long time, so
thank
I'm
you.
honored to be here and to share space with you and the watchers. Um, I have been in behavior analysis for 18 years. And yes, I was up writing session notes. I was up writing progress reports. I started as a behavior technician when I was in
Same.
college for my internship. I chose this for my internship.
So
And
you knew about ABA since undergrad?
yeah, I did. Actually, it's so interesting because I didn't know anything about ABA or autism. And now the
Okay.
college that I attended, they have a whole autism center at the
Okay.
college. But back then, they didn't have that. I had never even heard of autism, but I actually wanted to work with adolescents and go into social work. And so I was trying to find a relatable internship. And I waited until like the last Friday that I could apply for my internship. And the only thing left was yeah. And I
Okay.
was like, I don't know what this is. I have zero intentions of working with kids, but at least if I do this, then it'll be something I can put on my resume that I've done just in case there's ever an opportunity for me to work with kids. So I ended up falling in love with a little boy named Mark, and I've been an ABA since then. I changed my major. I ended up getting my master's degree in teaching with a specialty in behavior analysis because at that time, the ABA master's degree was uncommon. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to find a school local to me that met my specific scheduling needs that had a master's in ABA. But I worked my way through every level. I was before I became a BCBA, there's this mid-tier supervision that I was doing where I was overseeing behavior technicians, client programs, similar to what the BCBA does now. And then after I was in for 5 years before I even heard about the BCBA certificate. Actually, my boss was like, "There's a certification, you need to get it. You would be so great at it." And I was like, "I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm kind of just passing through, although I've been there for 5 years. I was non-committal. I was non-committal. And so I said, well, I'll check it out. And so I decided, like, let me just check this out. And he told me how much I would make. So at the time, I was
Yeah.
making $34,500 a year, and I thought I was balling because I was straight out of high school or out of college, and I was like, yeah, I got benefits, I got a
Right.
salary, and so I just thought I was just, doing a thing. And he said, well, the starting salary for a behavior analyst here is 62,500. And I was like, what? That's life
So
changing.
double? What?
Yeah, it was double. I
Yeah.
was I was a single mom and that was probably going to be the only thing that was going to get me to like put more on my plate, right? Or go back and get, another degree or a certification. And so I was like, 60,000, that would change my life.
Yeah.
And so and now I think about it, I'm like, 60,000, we can't even
That's
live.
nothing. I was gonna say back in that time, because even when you say those numbers, I came as a Q and I was making like 32,000. I'm like, okay, look at
Yeah, I
me.
was
And then
on
when I
a
found out the
car.
BCBAs were making like 68, 60,000, and for me, like Black women in my family never made over $30,000. And then
Yeah.
I'm talking like the educated ones. So for me to take a jump up that's almost double, it was like, okay, Black girl, make you
Yeah.
some money. Yeah, no,
Yeah, for sure.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah, so that's how I moved up. And so I stayed in every position I was in for years, at least
Yeah,
5 years. I was just, doing case management as a behavior analyst, and before that, case management as a mid-tier supervisor. And then I moved into a clinical director role. It was 10 years in the field, and I was like, okay, what else can I do? So I get that question a lot too, like, what else can I do besides just case management?
right.
Um, and I was asking myself the same question at 10 years. I was like, yeah, at some point, I was in my 30s. I had my second child, and I was like, I'm not about to keep running around behind these kids. I'm not always gonna have the energy, right, to have
Yeah,
to sweat at work. And so I was like, what else can I do? But I didn't also want to leave the families. It was hard for me because I
yeah,
wanted to be in the homes because I was so fulfilled by that work. Um, but it just got to a point where I was like, I either need to do something different or I'm gonna need to explore a different industry even because I just want to continue growing. So I took a clinical director position, and it was my first time doing anything on the administrative side, besides like report writing, but really leading other managers. And I had no caseload at all. And so I spent my whole day in the office, and
can you
I
say that
caseload.
one more time? You
I
had
had
no.
no caseload, and I was scared. I was like, I'm gonna miss my family's
Yeah,
child. I did miss
you
my
got
family,
over it.
but I was good.
Yeah,
I was at a different level in my career, right? Where it was
yeah,
just like that was not my mission. I think I had like brought forward, a new generation of people who had become behavior analysts who I was managing and mentoring, and they became behavior analysts. And so I had to move with them naturally.
yes,
And so I started really using, and I didn't know anything about OBM at the time, but I started using organizational behavior management as a means to manage other leaders because I knew I had to use data in order
yeah,
to give them feedback, in order to teach them, because they were not just going to fall under like the authority of me, right? Or under my experience. They needed facts. They needed me to be able to say, this is what we're noticing in you and your behavior.
hmm,
And as a result, it's impacting outcomes for our clients. As at this point, I wasn't just leading behavior technicians, I was actually managing other leaders, which was
yeah,
totally different for me. And so I knew I had to have a different approach with them where I could help them to see themselves and look at their own data rather than just feeling like they were just receiving, feedback that they didn't want to hear from somebody who just been here for a long time and thinks you
little
know
finger
everything.
wag, yeah.
That's key. So that was like my first, I think when I first became passionate about OBM before I even knew what it was. But then once I discovered what it was, and I don't remember how I heard about it, probably an email from the BACB or something that was like, take this class. And I went on maternity leave. And while I was on leave, I took a specialization class in certification in OBM. And I fell in love with it. I was like, this is ABA. I get the question a lot. How does it differ from? It's very different in terms of I don't even have a better word than like the vibe of it is very different because you're
Hmm.
you're looking at organizationally, and you're looking at training and management of people and human behavior at a different level. But the application of it is pretty similar if you allow it to be similar, right? So if you just take the basic principles of reinforcement and you know teaching, skill teaching, and trials to mastery, and things like that, antecedent strategies. Like if you just take what we already know about behavior analysis, it's actually very easy because those are transferable skills that I think the
Yeah,
industry doesn't want to allow us to transfer either for upward mobility or to outside industries. They think we just work with kids. And I would get so
Yeah.
frustrated because they'd be like, oh, so you work with kids? And I was like, well, I actually don't see the kids, right? I work with adults. And this is what I do. And so it even got to a point where I was joking the other day, I would tell people when I was in certain meetings that I was a data analyst. And I would leave the behavior analyst part out because they would try to pigeonhole me into autism or into
Mm.
children. And it was like, if I'm ever going to break out of traditional ABA and be respected as a business leader and an executive, I have to let these people, right, which a lot of them were white men at the top, I had to let them know that I could kind of play on the field with them. I could read data, I could analyze data, and I could give recommendations that were data based and data driven. I can make data driven decisions about the organization. And I think that kind of changed everything for me in terms of direction of my career.
I love that. I'm a data analyst because
Hmm.
then you can apply that to any setting and be
Yeah.
received in any setting.
Yeah,
I
and human
like
services
that.
is beautiful, right? We don't
It
want to like turn
is.
people away from human services, but it's a lot. It's a lot on the heart. And also
Yeah.
we don't get the respect. So I'm not gonna lie, I've thought many times throughout my career about just going to work at Google. And I was like, they probably need a data analyst. They might
Yeah.
not know they need a BCBA, but they need that too. They may not know they need a behavior
Yes.
analyst, but they definitely know they need a data analyst. And I can consult with businesses, which I've done. As soon as I started changing the mindset around what behavior analysis looks like outside of
Mm.
autism and outside of
Yeah.
children. And I think OBM has allowed me to like open that up and just talk about like what exactly does it look like to lead and to run an organization. And it's interesting, there aren't a bunch of OBM specialists leading companies. They're regular people who actually need consultation from people who understand organizational behavior. I think there's a high market for it, but we have to go in and show them that there are people out here who understand human behavior and can contribute in a different way.
I agree. So you mentioned I can just go work at Google because Google does need a data analyst. What
Yeah.
was one of the biggest contracts or biggest projects that you landed, and how were you able to scale your business to handle something like that?
The biggest contract I ever landed was with IEHP.
Okay.
Their Inland Empire Health Plan is the largest insurance company here in Southern California. And it's all Medi-Cal. And they were sending us from the time we started, they started out like, I mean, we got our contract and they were sending us like 8 or 10 or 12 referrals per month
Okay.
in our first year open. And that's when I thought I was just going to come in and I was just going to, when I started my business, that I was just going to go back to being a behavior analyst and run a social skills group. That's what I wanted to do. I was like, let me just go out of corporate and just run my little social skills group as a behavior analyst. And when they start sending all the referrals and I was broke and I had no job, and so I didn't feel like I had a choice but to do what I know how to do, what I'm good at, I had to hire people and scale the company.
Ah,
And it was scary, right? Because I had never hired someone. I had done
yeah.
interviews for my job, but I never posted on Indeed or anything like that. So I would say that, it took all of the OBM understanding that I had to start putting in place certain systems. I started experiencing burnout shortly in because the number of referrals we were receiving, I was the behavior analyst. Um, and but I was also the scheduler and I was also
Yeah.
the intake person. So I had to split. I actually had my family. I had my family members, my sister, two sisters, my brother-in-law, my husband. And I had to say, okay, y'all need to figure out what you're gonna be good at. And we turned those into departments. So now we have 6 departments: intake, HR, scheduling, and they're not all still here, but they did help get us off the
I
ground.
love
I think
that.
that was it, but that was the biggest thing, was delegating, understanding my own capacity and what I could do. And I had other contracts. So when I started Behavior Genius as it is now in the ABA, I had other contracts. My biggest contract was I just I created a pamphlet and start taking it to businesses and telling them that I was an organizational behavior management specialist and that I wanted to
Okay.
help on the operations side. And of course, they wanted ABA companies. They wanted to hire me as a BCBA, to bill hours. And I was like, no, that's not what I do. So it was hard because as soon as they heard BCBA, they're like, oh, you can do this. No, I want
Mhm.
to assist with training, development of systems. I want to assist with technology, stuff like that. My biggest contract on that side, just as an independent OBM specialist, was I want to say it was like $60,000 for a
Mhm.
6-month project, which was insane.
Yes,
This
it
isn't something
is.
I'm saying passively, like I'm just rolling in dough. I need that back right now, actually. But I was consulting for this company. Like businesses have the money to
Yes.
invest in consulting, and they know they may not know exactly what they need, but they know that they need something. A lot of companies are spending, tens of thousands of dollars monthly or quarterly or whatever to get some type of operational or OBM support. That might not be what they're calling it, but they're spending
Yeah.
money on executive coaching. They're spending money on, outside consultation. And so I just shot my shot with an
Yeah.
organization, and they were like, yes, that's exactly what you need. And so when I went into the meeting, I had a little brochure, but then they were like, and do you do this as well? And one thing my mom taught me is when they ask you if you do this, just tell them yes and then figure it
Mhm.
out.
I love
I was
that.
like,
Hey, because I
it was
can
like,
always learn. Just to let me
yes,
know
I
what you
do.
need from me.
Yeah, don't ever tell them that you can't do something because you can do anything. It might take you a week or 2 weeks or
Mm.
a month to get it up and running, and you give them the time frame that you want to give them. So whatever they asked of me, are you capable of this? And it was like, I am. But what I leaned on in that meeting was I had the audacity, first of all, to walk in there. But what I leaned on in that meeting was I had to recognize that I had transferable skills, and I wasn't
Yeah.
coming to them as just a behavior analyst that knew how to design client programs. I could take what I knew and do more than that. That was the first time I think I had to remind myself of
Yep.
that these skills were transferable because we think of the admin part as transferable. I can write a report, I can use Google, I can get, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, no, the data analysis part and even the using data to make the next decision, the pinpointing, those
Hmm.
are skills that you can use in any industry, and they're actually more profitable in industries outside of ABA as
They
well.
sure are. Speaking of, I was reading your book this
Yeah.
month, and you mentioned some of those things in your book, that pinpointing before you make that next decision. Can I just ask, what inspired you to write Radical OBM? And how has that shaped your mission or created workspaces that people don't have to recover from anymore?
Yeah. I was inspired to write the book. Actually, someone asked me if I would um, be interested in writing a book on OBM. And I was like, with you? And it was someone I didn't know. And I was like, collaboratively? She said, no, just yourself. Like we need it. And I feel like you have an understanding and a knowledge, and we need to have it. And so I was like, I'll think about it. And of course, yes, I can, right? I'll think about it. And so I did. Within 1 year from that conversation, I self-published Radical OBM. But I
Wow.
didn't want it to be just a business book. I wanted it to attract Black business owners, specifically Black women. And I didn't just want to attract them to learn about business. I wanted them to understand the transformational work that I had to do. People think that as you rise in leadership, that things just get easier and the problems of the day, like they fall off of you. They actually pile on harder, right? You eat the first
Mm,
bite of crap, right? And
yeah.
so, but all of the racial and gender barriers that I experienced just in my career, being othered, being the only, I experienced them in my own business as I was trying to
Hmm.
like build my own company and my own empire. Um, I experienced all the same things, racism, lack of respect, just with my team that I paid, which takes so much humility to sign a paycheck and how for people that don't respect you because of who you
Yes.
are, right? And so there's just things that I knew that I would not have experienced if I was like Steve or Bob. And
Yeah.
I gaslighted myself for a long time because I was like, oh, I don't want to say it's that. It might just be the age. It might just be, but no, it was very much that. And my mission was to just talk a little bit more about that and speak to leaders who are probably experiencing that and feeling like it's a lot for them to overcome. I wanted to tell true stories and be a little bit more raw and be relatable because I'm such a relatable person if you get to speak to me, right? So I didn't want to write a book that only a certain type of people could relate to. I wanted to write a book that people who were not in behavior analysis or
Yeah.
not business owners that they could relate to as well, because it's really about leadership, and the things that we have to navigate being women and being Black women in leadership. And so that did turn for me into, I realized that I owned a company and I had employees that didn't respect me, that didn't honor my position, that I didn't feel like I really had a connection with. And I thought it was just gonna be kumbaya. Like, I'm a good person, I'm gonna just
Yeah.
hire people and they're going to see that and it's just going to be, but it wasn't that. And so I realized I didn't like working at my company. And I called my sister crying one day while I was writing this book. And I said, you know what I realized today? Um, I don't like my job.
Wow.
It's like CEO is just a job that I could quit. And it helped me to realize that every day I make a decision. And so if I'm making this decision to stay at this job and in this role, what is the reason? And that's when the reason became because there's other Black women. There's people who are uncomfortable in their workspace right now who are looking for a workspace that they don't have to go to therapy just to
Hmm.
stay at the job, right? They leave the job. And so, because I was literally in therapy at that point for the previous workplaces and for my current one. And so I realized, like, I have power and influence here. And if I'm going to stay here, I have to create a space that's safe for me. And while I'm doing that, I will also create spaces that are safe for other people. And that started to become kind of my mission, is to create workspaces that people just don't have to recover from. We have to be in these spaces.
Yeah.
And they should be healthy spaces. And I realized I had the power to do that with the influence that I had and the responsibility. Because yeah, I could have just went and got a job at Google, and it would have probably been easier than doing a movement.
I hope you're not offended, but I just marked it up like it was the Cooper book. I was like, "Ooh, that was good. That one was for me." So I have felt that way, even as an entrepreneur. For you to even say, I didn't even like being a CEO of my own company. Like, you never want to say that because you're like, nobody's going to want to work with me or what. But
Yeah.
that's so transparent and honest. And there are times in my career right now, I feel like we get to a place where it's like, I want to leave ABA, period. Like, I want to go and just be like a stagehand on Broadway or something. Like, I just want to do something
Totally
completely
different.
different, right? I want to like volunteer in my kids' schools and like do their Christmas pageants and so they're like I just want to step away because this field is hard on the heart. It's
Yeah.
very fulfilling. Like I always say, like I have clients that I haven't seen in 10, 12 years that I still love and I have a place in my heart for. But that's not life
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
It is. And just having that place that you don't have to recover from because we are meant to work for most of our lives. And I always say, like, I'm ready to retire. And that's why I want to teach as many people as I can. I want to disseminate on YouTube and speaking engagements and write books so that I can take a break. And so I know that this field is straight with
Yeah.
other Black women who have the same values and things like that. So I definitely agree with that.
You left your mark. I think I've definitely been there where I'm like, I love this industry and I love what I've gained internally, what I've learned. I grew up, I started in behavior analysis. I was 20 and I'll be 40,
Wow.
half of the year. And so when I became a BT, I had just turned 21. And so I've seen all the change and I've grown up in this industry. And even though this is what I'm best at, is what I'm most comfortable with, I do have those days where I'm like, what else? It's time for the next generation to hold the torch. And I think right now, the ones who've been in for 10 plus years, we're starting to be ready to like pass that torch
Yes.
to. And I
Yeah.
think that's such a beautiful thing that I've seen a lot of behavior analysts who've been behavior analysts for a long time, especially Black BCBAs who are saying, we're going to potentially move in another direction, but we also want to make sure that the industry, that we're still going to have a place here and that our legacy is going to be left here because we care.
I know you not only have one business, you have Behavior Genius, but then you have Behavior Operations.
Operations.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you manage multiple streams of income and multiple businesses while also managing a work life balance because you're a mom, you're a wife, you are a content creator, you go to Portia and I met the first time because we both were keynote speakers at the WEVA conference, and
Yeah.
you are a keynote speaker in a conference in February. So you do all of these things.
Yeah.
How do you manage it all? And do you manage it all because they all bring you multiple streams of
That's a good question. They
income?
don't, they do all bring me multiple streams of income, and that's important to me because I have freedom. And
Yeah.
so it's not like I'm getting rich because I'm spending money to travel or but I'm putting, I think, my skill sets in different hats, and I'm letting what I know kind of work for me, so that I don't have to work so many hours a week just to make this amount, right? But also I'm very creative, and I'm a visionary. I have a lot of ideas. I move very quickly. And so I need to always be creating. So there's times where I
Yes.
feel more creative in one of my businesses or in one area than others, and I'll kind of let that do its thing, and then I'll move over here and I'll like create something really cool, and then I'll be like, okay, let that kind of do it, and I'll move over here and I'll create. So I think that's one thing that I'm noticing is actually is within me, but it's slowing down a little bit, is me wanting to exist in a lot of different environments at once, because my priorities are changing. At first, I was like, maybe I'm just getting like tired, because
Yeah.
I'm getting an
Like
age.
mama back hurt.
My baby,
I'm
I'm not sleeping
old.
the same. I go, things are different. I'm going to sleep early. I gotta get up and walk now. It's certain things I gotta do for my self-care that I didn't have to do in my
Right.
20s.
Like my watch is telling me that I should get up and
I gotta
stretch.
stand up. Yeah. It's that this year I learned that my priorities are just changing. And I'm realizing that I'm no longer willing to tolerate allowing like my visions to just get away with me and put me in a place of obligation. My husband and
Mhm.
I talked about, he's like, you just, when you get really frustrated, what is the thing that like frustrates you the most? Like when you feel overwhelmed, what is the thing that really overwhelms you? Because about quarterly, I get really overwhelmed and I like hit a wall. So I'm trying to train myself not to do that. And I'm like, you got to hold me accountable. If you see me going toward the ledge, I need you to just bring me back.
Yeah. Hmm.
The feeling that I have to be obligated to other people, or to things that maybe I don't feel like I have the time for or the energy for, or that I have multiple like competing priorities, right? Multiple obligations at the same time on the same day. And feel, because when you have obligation, number one, you resent the thing, even if you want to.
Hmm.
So you might like it or enjoy it or, whatever, it might be fulfilling. But if it's an obligation, then I resent it if it interferes with another thing that I also consider an obligation. So work and family, right? Working my children. And so one job and another job. It just, I want to be able to exist. I think I put in the work, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, I know that I'm still too young to retire, too young. They say, watch me though.
Yeah.
Me, and I want to work. But right
Yeah.
now, I want to retire in a sense that I want to work only in ways that I want to work, on the days I want to work, on the
Yes.
stuff that I want to work on. I don't want to be obligated to anything. What I did was, when I got back from vacation, it was Saturday. We came back from Tulum, and I sent an email to my team and I said, these are my work hours. I'm available to you from 7 to 11 a.m. The middle of the day, I'm homeschooling my children. And
Hmm.
homeschool didn't start for another 2 months, but I knew I needed to break a routine that I have of being constantly available and having zero boundaries. So I didn't feel present anywhere. Every
Yes.
obligation. And that is the kind of thing that makes me feel overwhelmed. So I knew I had to carve out time where it's like, okay, from these hours, I think that I can do my full job as the CEO of Behavior Genius in 20 hours a week. And if I can't, I'm doing something wrong, because
Yeah.
my if I can't, I'm carrying the day to day and I shouldn't be, or maybe I need to hire someone, or so better, stronger delegation,
Yeah.
and then compartmentalizing. I'm willing to wake up early so I have 2 hours of my own time, two
Hmm.
hours of meeting time, and then after 11 o'clock, I will not respond to your emails. I will be
Hmm.
100% with my children and present with them, because I've never been able to give them the same level of presence that I've had to give my career. But freedom doesn't have to be earned. You can just have it. You can work in yourself to a point where you are saying, this is my priority, are my children, and I'm not going to keep justifying overworking myself to care for my children as a substitute for me actually being with my children. That's a matter of my values. It has nothing to do with how hard I work, what my degree is. This is just what I value, and I'm deciding right now to stop being burnt out by honoring what I value, which is time with my children, which I can never get back. I can get any job. I can stop working right now and come back to work in 10 years, and I'll still run circles around these people, right? As a data analyst, in any,
Right.
but right now my kids need me. And
Yeah.
what type of, I cannot show up in integrity and in leadership and ask people not to be burnt out if I am not setting the right boundaries to say, this is what I value, and this is how I'm going to be able to show up for you guys day in and day out. I need to show up for my family first.
I know it won't be the last time that I see you because I'm like fangirling you. I'm like, can you sign my book, please? Just to take us out, what is some of the future plans for Behavior Genius? And tell us where our viewers can find you.
Oh, okay. I'm my best on Instagram. It's a great way to find me. LinkedIn as well. I connect with people through social media channels. Um, Also for Behavior Genius, right now we're in a transitional space where we are really working on just making sure that our vision aligns with the vision that I have for family and specifically for serving the underrepresented families. So more partnerships, more, I think, group therapy models, more community-based therapy. I would love to, I'm working right now on therapy models that are inclusive and they don't resemble traditional ABA. That'll be not as much of a heavy lift for me or for my team, but also that'll really engage families in the community who aren't familiar with ABA and think that it's only one way. I intend to be a lot more multifaceted and more creative about how we can serve the community in a way that they need and also preserve the science. So I will be speaking at the Black Women in Behavior Analysis Appreciation Day conference in February, my birthday weekend. So I'm looking forward to that, taking it one day at a time and, really allowing God to lead my company.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it with another aspiring BCBA, current BCBA. Just share it with a friend. And we will see you on the next one.
Thank you, Don.
Bye. Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Portia.